Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to tell you about a singer-songwriter by the name of GREG HUMPHREYS. Now, before you say, GREG HUMPHREYS, I've never heard of GREG HUMPHREYS, well, guess what? By the end of this episode, you will, and I'm going to try to go through his career as quick as possible, make this video as short as possible, so you can scurry out and buy anything you can by GREG HUMPHREYS. Now, he's best known for fronting two bands, DILLON FENCE and HOBEX. And I'm going to go through their catalogs as well as his solo career. But I usually like to start these videos out by telling you how I got into the artist. Well, I was working at Abbey Road Distributors. Nothing to do with the label. It was a music wholesaler. And we got promo in of this band called DILLON FENCE. And I'd never heard of them, but I love to investigate, check out new music. Now, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, that's okay. This one I took home. And the first thing I heard was this big bellowing voice. And then the music kicked in. And I was hooked because it was just great guitar pop. This was at a time when there was a lot of grunge bands around. But this band, the guitars were clean. They had great harmonies, great hooks. There were songs with acoustic guitars. There were songs with so much passion and depth. And that album, Rosemary, just totally blew my mind. But now let's go back to the beginning of their career, and I will walk you through Greg's career because he's a marvelous, talented singer-songwriter that deserves a lot more attention. We're going to start with 1989 is when DILLON FENCE debuted with their self-titled EP. And there's been a few versions of this. This is the original version, and then the EP was later reissued. This is 6 tracks. This is their first release. What do they sound like? They're just a great guitar pop. They're not power pop. They're not jangle pop, but they have everything mixed in. Great songs. And it's obvious that there's maybe a little bit of soul in GREG HUMPHREY's voice, but it's this big, wonderful machine that just bellows out these songs. There's a song on here called Francis, which sounds a lot like the Smiths, so you can maybe guess what was kind of influencing them at the time. But yeah, this is a great EP. Then in 1991, out comes the EP Christmas. Of course, everyone knows I'm a Christmas fan, so I had to get this. This has 3 tracks, and this is just more great guitar pop. You can tell already that GREG HUMPHREYS, there's emotion behind that voice, and there's a great chemistry between all the band members. It's just fantastic. But then the album came out in 1992. This is called Rosemary. This is the album that blew my mind. Some of you may recognize the cover by going into record stores in the 90s. This is just a glorious, fantastic piece of guitar pop. Power poppers are going to love it. Indie rockers are going to love it. Jangle rockers are going to love it. It's got a little bit of everything. There's a lot of soul in GREG HUMPHREY's voice, which will reveal itself over time. But there it is, just a great collection of songs. There's not a stinker on this. In fact, the closer track, I Will Break, it's stunning. It's just this emotional, it's really hard to describe, but it's absolutely fantastic. This is one of my favorite albums of all time, I can tell you that. It's absolutely fantastic. The opening track, Daylight, was also released as an EP, and there it is there. This has 2 songs from the album, which is Daylight and Hey Mockingbird, and Hey Mockingbird is fantastic. It's got a non-album track called Sugarcane. It's got their version of Blondie's Dreaming, and then it has a song called Sad Inheritance, but it's the acoustic version. And it's just stellar, great, clean, wonderful guitar pop. And boy, was I excited in 1993 when Outside In, their second album, came out, and they'd been sort of grungified. I have to admit, I was a little disappointed at first because all of a sudden those clean, wonderful guitars were kind of fuzzed up a little bit, and the production was a little muddy compared to the first album. It sounded like they were kind of being swallowed by the grunge machine. But the good thing is the songs were fantastic. This is just jam-packed. There's a heck of a lot more songs in here. Yeah, there's songs that are heavier than the first album, but once you get past that sort of heavier sound, the songs are still as great. Now, GREG HUMPHREYS, he changed his voice. Instead of coming from the throat, it seemed to be coming from the soul. There was more rasp to his voice, and it seemed to be far more emotional. So while the music sort of adapted to whatever was going on around them at the time, his voice seemed to be really coming from the soul. There's a lot more soul to it. Still, it's a fantastic album. The EP, Any Other Way, was released, and that contains Any Other Way from the album and some non-album tracks there that you may want to track down. It was a great track. I mean, I could have picked 7, 8 songs that could have been singles, and this was one of them. In 1994, out comes the album Living Room Scene. It was a move forward, but it also was a sound that incorporated their heavier style as well as the cleaner style from the debut album. So this sonically sounds like it would fall in between the first two albums. As songwriters, they really moved forward. I think this might even be my second favorite Dillon Fence album. But it's really fantastic, full of great songs. Their chemistry clicked. They were just creating great music. And sadly, after this 1994 album, Dillon Fence broke up. Ain't that always the way? They start getting better and better, and poof, they're gone. But they've still remained friends over the years, and they've done live shows together, and they put out a live album, I think, in 2014. But if you can track this down, this is a nice little collection. This is Dillon Fence Best, and it contains the best tracks as well as a few new songs that were recorded specifically for this collection. So you're definitely going to want to track that down. It's a great collection, Dillon Fence Best. Now, the band split, and then GREG Humphreys formed a band called HOBEX. Now, HOBEX was a whole different ball of wax. They were still guitar-oriented, but it was funkier and a lot more soulful. Remember how I mentioned on the Dillon Fence stuff, you can hear that soul coming out? Well, that really comes out in HOBEX. It's a mix of soul, funk, rock, pop, folk, everything thrown together. This is their first EP, and it has one of my favorite GREG Humphreys songs of all time called Don't Even Say, which was absolutely fantastic. Now, in 1998, HOBEX released their first album. Now, this is the reissue. For some reason, I couldn't find the original, but I wanted to at least show this. This was actually reissued by Slash Records in 1999. You know, some people were throwing them into the jam band thing. No, they were coming from the same place. There was a little bit of southern rock in there. There was soul, funk, but it's totally unique. And GREG Humphreys' approach to songwriting and his vocals, and they really stood out. This isn't a guy just singing songs to get girls and make money. This is a guy singing to save his life. In the year 2000, out comes the album Wisteria, and this is another great collection of songs. This is interesting because it's like the first couple songs, the horn section, this big, bombastic, and it's wonderful and powerful. And then it almost seems like they ran out of money to record the rest of the album, so they just sat around the microphone and then just did the rest of the songs acoustically. Now, I know that's not what happened, but you know what? The balance is just fantastic because you hear this just big, wonderful sound, but then you hear this more intimate sound. That's kind of what you connect with more, is the intimate sound. It's really fantastic. 2002 brings us the album You Ready Man? Yet another great collection of songs. I mean, Humphreys and the band were really stretching out, really pushing the limits on songwriting and really connecting. This is when music and lyrics connect with the universe. It's really fantastic. Like I said, this is You Ready Man, came out in 2002. Next studio album came out in 2007, and that was called Enlightened Soul. But this was the last HOBEX album. I believe that there was a live album in there somewhere. Same with Dillon Fence. There is a live album or two in there somewhere. But generally speaking, I don't collect live albums, nor do I talk about them on my videos. But GREG Humphreys did return in 2008 with his first solo album. This is called Trunk Songs, and holy cow, this thing is just... It's so intimate. It's him and his guitar. Initially, you might think, oh, it's just some guy sitting around singing the blues. But no, it's deeper than that. Because first off, the blues doesn't have great melodies like this. This is when the songs just really reach out and touch you. And it's just a great collection of songs. That's GREG Humphreys' Trunk Songs. Came out in 2008. 2010 comes Realign Your Mind. Another great collection. Now, he brings other people in to help out. But it's still purely GREG Humphreys, and it's coming from the same place as Trunk Songs. Very emotional, very intimate, and it's just absolutely killer. 2011 comes People You May Know, yet another fine collection of songs. I mean, I just have to keep telling you just what a great songwriter he is. These songs are different from HOBEX. They're different from Dillon Fence, but they're coming from the same place, but they're more mature. Sometimes they're more internalized. Sometimes they're reaching out. He's just a unique talent. 2013, out comes Bohemia, which is another fine collection of GREG Humphreys songs. Sometimes, I listen to these songs, I go, oh my God, this is amazing. And I'm thinking, like, this has to be an old classic. And I look at it, but no, it's written by GREG Humphreys. 2014 comes the Cosmic Irony EP. Do I need to say it anymore? It's GREG Humphreys. Then GREG Humphreys decides to form the Greg Humphreys Electric Trio for the album Lucky Guy, which came out in 2016. And does it sound like HOBEX? No, it doesn't sound like HOBEX, but it's closer to HOBEX than anything else. But it's just another great collection of songs. I'm sorry, I can't tell you just how great this guy is. You're definitely going to need to check him out. And then finally, 2018 comes Haymaker, and guess what I'm going to say? Yeah, I'm going to say he's a great songwriter, and I'm going to say these are a bunch of great songs, and you need to own this. And you will be correct if you thought that I was going to say that, because I'm sorry. Look, you clicked on a video that said Greg Humphreys, so I had to tell you about him. So anyway, that is it. And I'm sure I'm missing something here, but I was just really eager because I wanted to share. There's so many people in the vinyl and CD community on YouTube that are getting tired of videos about the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all that kind of stuff, and they're seeking new music. Well, that's what I try to do here, and I just want you to check out Dillon Fence, HOBEX, and Greg Humphreys and Greg Humphreys Electric Trio. They will definitely be worth your while, and you really need to listen to his music like your life depended on it. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for sitting there and allowing me to talk about Greg Humphreys and Dillon Fence and HOBEX, and I hope you check him out because he's really a great artist. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me, I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.